With so many things that I seem to have done, I don't know how much to do my day job. And actually, one of the things I'm learning to do these days is to say no to people when they ask me to do things. It's a real skill, because most of the things people want to do are so interesting, and finding the time of the day to do them all is very difficult. So the brief I was given today was to talk about things that I'm sort of interested in, things that I'm inspired by, or things that matter to me in about 20 minutes, which really isn't long enough. But I thought I'd talk about two things that I know a little bit about. One's private equity, and just give you an insight into how I think about private equity, how I got into it, and why it's of interest to me. And the second thing is entrepreneurship, and why entrepreneurship is something to be celebrated and something that's really, really important to the future of our country. So, private equity. I'm a really sad bloke in many respects, in the sense that I actually knew I wanted to do private equity even before I knew what it was. At the age of 14, I was in an economics class listening to my teacher talk about this company called 3i, which is the grandfather of the private equity industry. And I don't know why, I just thought that sounded great. Working with businesses from all over the country, doing all sorts of different things, just appealed to me. I then realized very quickly that if you're sort of 15, 16, talking about the fact you can be in private equity, other people look at you and go, you're quite weird. So I sort of invented a new thing, and actually it was quite a real thing, which is space. It's my other great passion, but my third passion, one I couldn't fulfill because I was absolutely determined when I was growing up as well to become an astronaut. And I'll come back to that later on, but just keep that thought. Private equity is actually the next best thing. But William Hague was a very familiar figure, and he's a bit like him in the sense that back in the 80s, he came to sort of prominence for standing up and talking and lecturing, in fact, hectoring almost, Margaret Thatcher at the age of sort of 16. And he was one of these sort of very small characters, but with a booming Yorkshire voice, and that marked him out. And frankly, that's how I got my job in private equity. I basically knew what it was, and when someone said to me, the recruitment person who was running the recruitment program at Barclays Bank said, what is it you might do at Barclays? And I said, well, this thing called private equity sounds very interesting. And she looked at me and she said, what is that? And I go, well, I know you do it. And she sort of looks through her papers and goes, yes, we do. And I go, I'd quite like to do it. She goes, yeah, great, we'll see if we can fit you in. And it was literally that. Now, you've got to remember, this is going back to 1993, so a while ago, when private equity wasn't particularly well known at all. But what was it that captured me in private equity? And I think there's a quote from a chap called Peter Drucker, and excuse me, I'm getting old, so I have to use these things. But the quote from Peter Drucker, does anyone know who Peter Drucker is? Okay, he's a sort of a very, very eminent management thinker. He's one of these people who sort of started writing about management when people didn't even know really what management was. He sort of created a science around what management's about. And what he said was, wherever you see a successful business, someone has made a courageous decision. And you should hold that thought. That's really, really important. And the fantastic thing about being in private equity, apart from the fact that I have extremely low boredom thresholds, so just the fact of doing the same job day in, day out wouldn't work for me, is I get to meet lots and lots of very interesting people who accord me far more respect than I deserve, mostly because what they're seeing when they look at me is pound notes. I have the ability, if I use to deploy the funds my firm has, to change their lives, to help them build interesting businesses. And Living Bridge, which is my firm, and aside, actually, we used to be called ISIS Equity Partners, and I guess that was a name we had to change, really, given that doesn't really bring the right connotations, does it? Anyway, Living Bridge, my firm, we have done, since 1999, over 100 investments. And more than that, we've actually managed to realize or exit 65. So what does that mean for our investors? Well, those 65 have returned over £1 billion to them in cash. And that multiple of what we put in is about 3 times. So it's a reasonable return, if you like. But more than that is not so much what we do with the money, because that's really only part of the game. What we do is we help entrepreneurs think through how to build their businesses. We help them go from I've got a great idea, I'm doing a job, and it's working, to actually, how do you take it from this level to that level? And we do that through introducing them to people who know how to do it better than they do. We do it through helping them think through how you build the operations of the business. We help it through helping them think through how you position it so they can get the best value for their business down the road. And it's that's much more important than the money. The money is the entry ticket to play the game. But for us, it's bringing the expertise we have and we've built over the years in various different fields. And if you look at my website, you'll see, but it's consumer markets, it's business services, healthcare, education. We've built a reputation and understanding of how these areas work, and we're able to deliver that expertise and experience to entrepreneurs. In the intro, you heard that I was chairman of the British Venture Capital Association, the industry association for private equity in the UK. And again, I'm not sure how many of you remember, but that was an interesting time to be involved with that, actually, when I was chairman back in 2007. And I spent 2007 essentially in lots of business newspapers and on TV. And the reason I did was because one of my esteemed colleagues, one of my esteemed senior colleagues, prior to the industry association putting itself forward before the Treasury Select Committee, we were called to go and answer what private equity is about. What he said was, and I quote, "My tax rate is less than my cleaners." Private equity, for me, at that time in 2007, when we had a lot of difficulty and people didn't like us, the issue was over our reputation. And actually, if you just stop and think about it, people confuse reputation with character. See, reputation is what other people think of you, right? And you can fix that. Character is what you actually are. And if it's flawed, you can't. And I know that what I do and how I build businesses is good and it's beneficial. It creates jobs, improves productivity, builds employment, creates wealth for the country at large. If that was a bad thing, and the way I did that was flawed, then I'd have a problem. But it wasn't. And I have to say, in the sort of 8 years or so since we had our troubles back in 2007, private equity has come off the pages. I no longer do speeches to the media. People don't want to talk about us. Now, if I point you to an industry which basically has a real problem, and I mean real problem, which is going to take them decades to recover from, it's banking, right? Because yes, they have a reputational problem, but the reason they have a reputational problem is because their character, as we now know, in terms of what they did, is flawed. And you can reel the list off. PPI, Forex, interest rates. They were basically gaming the system in a way that was detrimental to our economy and to us. So actually, I was never actually worried about it at all. For me, private equity is a very, very good thing. I'm very happy to stand up and say it. And I've been asked in the past, well, why do you keep talking about private equity? Why don't you just accept that actually people really don't like it and actually you shouldn't shout about it? And I say it's for one simple reason. We are completely allied with entrepreneurs. My job is to help them build great businesses. And frankly, all of us in this room, frankly, owe everything we are in terms of economic success to entrepreneurship. There's not a great business in this country that's not been built by an entrepreneur. And frankly, I stand in complete awe of what they do. Their ingenuity, their creativity, the way they innovate, the way they actually take what looks like a simple thing and turn it in a different way, and suddenly you have an extraordinary product or service. And more than that, they are courageous. So the thing that separates an entrepreneur from the rest of us in this room, and I'm not an entrepreneur, the thing that separates us is that they have the courage to take whatever that idea is and make it happen. The rest of us don't, okay? That is the difference. There's less than 1% of the population entrepreneurs, real entrepreneurs. Because to be an entrepreneur, you almost have to be blind to risk. You have to be so focused on your goal, and despite whatever happens, you're going to get there. Now, the answer is, of course, not many people get there. But those that fail, get up and go again. Get up and go again. And it's that courage, that determination, that commitment, which makes them extraordinary people. And the ones that succeed, I mean, I didn't have to talk about it. They change our lives, don't they? I mean, Apple. That was a Sony Walkman for those old enough to remember. Yeah. Or vacuum cleaners and Dyson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. These extraordinary individuals change our lives, and they're amazing, amazing people, who we should be very grateful for. And, you know, we talk about the UK recovering from a very, very dramatic and very deep recession, and the fact that the government's going to actually get us out of this mess that we've been in. And if you listen to politicians talk, they talk about, you know, we're going to help the country recover, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Actually, it's got nothing to do with them. If you put your faith in government to do it, you're not hiding to nothing. We'll lose. The people who are going to get us out of this mess and maintain, let alone recover our living standards are entrepreneurs. It is they who will actually create the wealth, which will enable us to enjoy greater living standards down the road. So I thought I'd just finish this part of the talk anyway with a quick story about an entrepreneur who's very dear to my heart, a man who I met a few years ago and who I had the great privilege to work with. It's 15 years ago, I was invited to go to Holland to go and meet an entrepreneur who had an idea. And don't ask me how I got involved in this, but I met someone who then said this, who then said that, and off I went. I was quite grumpy because I'd get up really early in the morning and to go to a place called Bodegraven, which is, you wouldn't even find on a map, it's the middle of nowhere. And Holland is not a big country, but actually it took me hours to get there, so just how in the middle of nowhere in Holland it was, that explains it. And I get there, and it's a sort of pretty run-down factory, and this Dutchman, who actually I have to look up to because they're really quite tall, says to me, "Wol, thank you so much for coming. I'm going to share a secret with you." Okay. "Wol, I'm going to build the biggest soft drink and fruit juice business in the world." I just thought, it's a long way home. Why am I here? This is just, this man's clearly insane. Anyway, I just thought, well, it's a long way home, so I'll listen to his story. And anyway, he started to talk. And Franz, as he talked, and I listened, I began to think, wait a minute, this guy is onto something. He's onto something really interesting. And Franz had an idea, and the idea was really simple, and really simple. He'd figured out that actually the way that we produce soft drinks and fruit juices was completely inefficient. He'd figured out that basically supermarkets across Europe were getting bigger, and they didn't want to deal with multiple suppliers. He also figured out that the big people who supply the concentrate and the PET, which you need to make the plastics that you bottle things in, also were getting bigger. And the people in the middle were getting absolutely squeezed. So if you were a small producer in Holland, you actually ended up making no money at all. And his plan was very simple. I'm going to be big. So with your help, Wol, can I buy that company over there, that company over there, and that company over there? And then we'll go to supermarkets and say, we can help you in 3 countries. And we'll go to suppliers and say, we're now buying 3 times as much as we bought before, change our prices. Now, you go, well, of course, it's obvious, isn't it? But let me tell you, no one had done it. Not in Europe. Not then. And what Franz was able to do through sheer, phenomenally good leadership and management, because he had a multinational or multicultural type relationship with the different countries, and he had a management team that was made up of people everywhere, was to build an effective business that went from 70 million euros turnover to now 2.5 billion euros, and is not quite number 1, but hey, he's number 2 globally. Not bad. Something like 25% per annum compound growth in 15 years. Absolutely phenomenal. From a very simple idea. And frankly, I'm delighted because it's one of the best decisions I've ever made to back him. But that's entrepreneurship, that bold, that vision, and then the courage to say, I'm going to make this happen. And that's what Franz was able to do. And at Living Bridge, we call this the entrepreneur journey. This is the step you take, that first step on that journey to build something amazing, to realize your dream, to focus on creating wealth that, frankly, if we get it right, translates into the rest of the economy. And that brings me to the closing point I want to make, which is, really, we've got the most extraordinary problem in Western Europe. Basically, there's no growth. And it's worse than that, actually. There's no growth, and we're all getting older, I'm sorry to say. And if you've got people who are growing older, contributing less to the pyramid, you've got a smaller and smaller base of people actually doing the jobs and doing the work, supporting old and older people who don't work. And actually, the trouble with older people, actually it's old and very young people, is they cost a lot of money. And if that continues, then you have a recipe for disaster. The disaster being, why should that group in the middle, which is a smaller and smaller base, continue to pay for the elderly and the poor? Now, you might think I'm being heartless. I'm not being heartless. I'm just telling you about pure economics and demographics. This is happening. The only way to change the dynamic is to get wealthier. The only way to get wealthier is to back entrepreneurs to create the wealth for us. Thank you for listening. Oh, sorry. There you go. I closed without actually looking at my last thing. I mentioned being an astronaut, right? Okay. Sorry. Typical, isn't it? Overexcited and finished this too early. Now, so actually, the reason I mention this is it's the thing that actually keeps me going. So why do I keep doing what I'm doing? Why, given I've had some success, do I keep doing it? It's quite simple. Has everyone heard of a thing called Earthrise? It's a picture. You know what Earthrise is? I guarantee you've seen it. Everyone's seen it. It's that picture, lovely picture of Earth rising in that blue orb, rising in the darkness of space, and it's a shot taken by an astronaut. It was Apollo 8, 1968, William Anders. It was the kind of shot where he get the spaceships going, the spacecraft going around the moon. They see the Earth in that lovely blue, and it's just rising over the horizon. So it's not a sunrise, it's sort of Earth rises. It comes across the moon, and someone says, "Should I take a shot of that or not?" And they go, "Okay, let's take a shot of it." And it's probably the most famous picture of Earth. How many people do you think have seen that picture in real? Have you seen that sight in real life? It's like 200. And I'm sitting there thinking, I can be one of those people still. Because if I make enough money, the Russians will take me out.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and watch the rest of our talks below.